All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Be the Standard. Today we have a special guest, and his name is Alex Wassom. And Alex is the author of the book Stronger Than Your Pain. It's a book about his personal struggles with depression, anxiety, self doubt, all things that we've experienced in our lives at some given time, right? And his book is great because it really goes into how he was able to use that pain and kind of fuel his own personal growth through his own experiences. And it really is an honor to have him here. And Alex, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of expand on your book, your message, and why you decided to share your story and why you think it's currently resonating with so many people.
I appreciate that, man. First and foremost, want to express my gratitude to both you and Mike for having me on. Seeing what you guys are doing, both as men in the military, and then putting this podcast together to serve men. That's awesome. So truly humbled to be here with you guys. Thank you. By way of introduction, yeah, like you said, Alex Wassom, author of Stronger Than Your Pain. First and foremost, I'm a husband. I'm a father to three beautiful daughters, 5, almost 6, 4, and almost 2. So entering that terror stage, which is fun. And then finally got the little boy due in April. So next month. So awesome. That is at the core of my being, to the book is dedicated to. And, my story, and we can delve in, I'll kind of give a macro perspective here. But when I was 16, my grandmother passed away in very close proximity to me in my home at the time, actually. She was diagnosed with cancer, and then 4 months later, died in our home. And so seeing that process of death enter into my life was very hard for me to comprehend. I didn't have any tools to really understand, wrap my head and heart around the passing of a loved one. And it cut me deeply. I started asking the really hard questions at 16. Why are we here? Where do we come from? Where are we going? What's the purpose of life? And everybody that I was asking around me it's not that they provided the wrong answers, but they provided wrong answers for me personally, for what I was looking for. Everybody has their own perspective, but for me, I was looking really for, hey, what's the point? Because that's where my head was going after watching my grandmother, who I loved deeply and admired greatly, pass away. And what I saw was a torturous death. After 72 years, I can still hear her choking on that mucus as she passed away in my parents' bedroom in my childhood home. Like that scarred me. And as I started asking those questions, I couldn't find the answers. And so it sent me into a suicidal depression between 16 and really my early 20s, to the point. And I share this in the kind of the introduction of the book, where my girlfriend walked in on me cutting and making my way to that attempt. And I'm grateful that she didn't, obviously, but it was through that experience that I began to shift my perspective from what's the point of life, because I was looking for something to control. And if nobody could give me an answer of why we're truly here, then I can control one thing, and that's the timeline that I'm on. And you know what? I might as well just get to the finish line early, because I can control that race. And it went from that perspective of what's the point to eventually, really 16 years later, finding closure by writing the book of that's the point. We're all going to die, so that's the point. And there's purpose in that. We need to live a life worth living. For me, really being motivated by the passing of my grandmother, I need to live a life worthy of her memory, because my actions represent part of who she was and who she still is within me and my family, right? And so that shifted in my mind and gave me some purpose. And so now with the book and through the things that I'm building, it's, hey, how can I share these tools to help people overcome, manage, control the self-doubt, anxiety, depression that is associated with these traumatic experiences in our life, right? And how can we find purpose in that pain? Because life in and of itself is filled with painful experiences. So how can we take those and use those to our advantage, rather than being crushed underneath the weight of them, which I was, right? Sure. So that's where it started.
Yeah, no, and Mike and I just did an episode that we released this week, episode 5, on PTSD and mental health, and you know, in your book, and I remember reading about that exact part where your girlfriend walks in, and the way you described it resonated with me because you talk about staring into a mirror, right? A broken mirror, and a literal broken mirror that you had broken, and I've never looked into a broken mirror, but I've kind of looked in a mirror and felt broken, right? And kind of asked myself a lot of those same questions of why are we here? What's my purpose? How do I overcome these things that are just so difficult? And a lot of it for me was tied to PTSD, and I know you've dealt with that as well. And I know that's something that you wanted to talk about. And Mike and I do that often in the context of the military. But from a civilian's perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts on PTSD and how you kind of overcame that, and what coping mechanisms you use for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, first and foremost, I want to, and I write about this later in my book, actually, so I'd be interested to see what you think when you get to that point. But I did a lot of studies on post-traumatic stress, and that's the first thing I want to do is let's drop the disorder. Like post-traumatic stress, that is what it is, right? It's okay that we go through that. We all have that stress that we're carrying, but I don't want to recognize that as a disorder. There's nothing wrong. It's just a simple recognition of what you've been through. You've been through some hard times, and that's okay. Let's recognize that for what it is. I don't want this disorder putting us in this box and trying to confine us within it. But in my studies of post-traumatic stress versus post-traumatic growth, right? The studies were done, and a lot of them done with guys in the military who used the same experience, all in the same group of men, went through the same thing. Some had post-traumatic stress and some had post-traumatic growth. So what was that allowed them to experience the growth rather than the stress? And as I reflect on those studies and I reflect on what I went through myself, it really is acknowledging what happened, right? We have to face these things. I mean, you guys are fighters. I've started training jujitsu again recently, and I love the concept of you cannot fight an enemy that's behind you, right? You have to come face to face with these things. And so we need to make sure that we can recognize those things, put them in front of us so that we can at least put ourselves in a winning position. And when I went through the passing of my grandmother, I went through a bad car accident where I had to go get some therapy for that as well and deal with the post-traumatic stress of that experience. And through these things, I've recognized that when I put these things in front of me and I face them and I talk about them and I wrestle with them and I allow myself, especially as a man, to feel these things, I don't bottle them up, push them down, and ignore them, then I can address it head on. And I think that that's really important because then it allows me to understand, hey, what is this triggering within me? Where is this directing my mindset? How is this shifting my perspective? Which then allows me to find purpose in that pain and find areas of growth rather than letting it just weigh down on my shoulders because I'm not taking it off and putting it in front of me. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And Mike and I talk about that in episode 5 of us is, having to confront these things and take these things head on, not be, afraid to cry, not be afraid to show your emotions. And I think it was the episode prior that Mike kind of brought it out of me. I couldn't come up with, the ways that I had gotten better and the way that I had changed. But one of the things I've had to do is, show those emotions. And those are the things that have made me just a much, I don't know if it's a better person, but maybe better to other people around me. I don't know. But I feel a lot better just knowing that I'm more comfortable now showing emotions that I used to not share. So
I think that's really important, man. Because if you look at, I'm sure you guys are really familiar with rucking, right? Way more than I am. I've done a couple of go rucks, right? But like, let's say that we're trying to go a really far distance, right? There's 2 ways that you can get that far distance with the weight that you're carrying, right? You can lighten your load one of 2 ways. You can get really strong so that the load feels light, which takes a long time, or you can drop some of the weight, right? And that allows you to move faster. And I think that as especially us as men, as we recognize the emotions that we're carrying, it lightens the load for us, and it allows us to move forward. So this saying that I say all the time, the strength for two starts with the strength for you. So the strength for others is dependent upon your own strength. Oftentimes that strength can be increased by removing some of the weight that we're carrying. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be stronger every time to be able to move that distance faster, right? It's like, look, why don't we just remove some of the weight and have addition of self via the subtraction of the unnecessary? And I think that the big unnecessary that we need to remove is that we as men are not allowed to feel, right? We as tough, big, broad, strong men are not allowed to feel. Like, no, we are, right? We're human, right? So we're going to have these feelings. Let's come face to face with them. And, part of the tattoos that I have, I've got my left arm, which is the battle of life. And it's man and beast and man with God represented by the lion. And, that wrestle with man on man is sometimes with ourselves. Like, it's okay to wrestle with yourself. We need to do that. We need to encourage that, because that's where we come face to face with who we are. That's where we recognize where these things are coming from. And I also want to recognize with this, like, it's okay to be broken. I hate this talk track that we have in like this self-help industry of like, oh no, you're never broken. It's like, well, how do you know what needs to be fixed if you're not broken? Like, sure. Let's shift that to more of the kintsugi art of Japanese repair, where, yeah, you are broken and that's okay to be broken. Now let's put you back together better than you were. And let's do it with a little bit of gold mixed in with the glue. Let's increase your value and recognize that those scars that you carry from what you've been through hold value for you, and more importantly, for others. Now you can be a leader through what you've been through, right? Find purpose in that pain. And part of that is showing the vulnerability of, I've been through some shit and that's okay.
Yeah. So just to hit on that, I mean, you kind of talk about being broken. This is where I'm going to kind of disagree with you a little bit.
Please.
I think you can have, I just feel like if you say this, just because I know a lot of veterans, I know a lot of first responders, if you give them that title broken, they're immediately, they're going to shut down and deny it. Like, no. Like, or just feel like I'm broken, so I'm just going to drink alcohol a day and not get anything, not work towards getting better. Yeah. If you say something is broken, I'm good with that. But saying that you were broken as a person, I mean, that would be just like anything else. Like, I'd have to literally break every bone in my body for me to be considered broken. But I can tell you, there could be something in me that's broken. And I think for me personally, I just think that would be better received to the everyday person.
That's a good point.
If you tell someone once they're broken, that's honestly what that's so funny that you say, like, let's lean into that. I'm actually the person that's
goes the other way.
Let's get away from that language, because I know what it does to people. You know what I mean? But the way you put it is a nice way. But I don't think a lot of people are going to receive it that way. At least I wouldn't, and some people I know wouldn't. So I just wanted to kind of put that frame out there.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective, man, and I appreciate you sharing that, because everybody receives these things differently, right? I've worked with some veterans and military guys and other people, obviously regular civilians, who have really welcomed the perspective of like, thank you for letting me admit that I've broken, because I feel that way, but everybody keeps telling me you're not allowed to, right? Which to me, it's like, if I'm not recognizing, and I like your phrasing better actually, if I'm not recognizing that something is broken, then what you're telling me is that the state that I'm in is okay, and I don't feel like the state that I'm in is okay, right? So I need to recognize, and I like that, not as a person that you're broken, but something needs to be fixed. And if we refuse to recognize that there's something misaligned, something's broken, something's not the way it should be, then we're not giving ourselves permission to say, I don't like the way that I am right now. Everybody is telling me that I'm fine and you shouldn't be broken. You shouldn't feel broken. But it's like, dude, I do, right? And this goes back to your point, Denny, of I need to allow myself to feel that and recognize that, look, it's okay. Right. And that's the vulnerability that we can shift towards, of saying, as men, like, I don't have to be perfect all the time. I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to be imperfect, because that thing gives me room to fix it. Right. But Mike, I love that perspective. As people, as individuals, we are not broken, but we have things that are broken. Right. If I break an arm physically, I need to address that so that I can cast it and fix it. Right. If I have an emotional breakage inside, whether that's mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever, I need to acknowledge that broken so that I can then go fix it. but as the person itself,
He's
you're
almost
not broken.
that same exact example that you just use. I usually say broken leg.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? If you have a broken leg, you're not completely incapacitated. Just like if there's a part of you that's broken or feels broken, it's just time to repair that part of you.
Right? Totally. And Mike, we can always swing back around to this, but I appreciate that critique in there, because you're right. And I recognize that in myself, for me, it was liberating to be like, oh, dude, yeah, like, you know what, where I am broken, and that's okay. Right. But not everybody receives it that way.
Right.
Right. And so it really needs to come down to, hey, what got you to this point? And that's why the qualifying questions of where are you in your journey? What do you feel? And when somebody's like, I feel broken, it's like, cool, you're allowed to recognize that. But telling somebody you're broken, it's like, oh, nope, that's like, you don't want to label somebody with that,
right.
you know?
And just to get to something you said, and I don't want to forget, because I think it's very important. I don't know what you said that kind of made me think about this, but I've seen a couple of circumstances where there's people probably in your position, Denny's position, anyone's position, where they're actually the person that people come to for help.
Mm-hmm.
And don't ever take care of themselves first. And then they actually become really bad because they feel like, oh, no, I got to be there for other people. I don't have time to feel for myself or take care of these issues myself, and end up holding all that. And then I know if two people are off the top of my head, they both committed suicide. And I think they were the last persons to do it, because that was the person everyone went to for help. They're like, oh no, they offloaded their stuff on these people, and they were always there to listen to everyone's troubles. But lo and behold, they weren't taking care of their own first. So I think it's just a thing to put out there to people that are in the self-help world, or just you're that friend that's always out there listening to people that, hey man, like, you got stuff too. You got to take care of yourself before you can really take care of anyone else.
That's it, man. And it probably stemmed from the strength for two starts with the strength for you, right? If you don't take care of yourself, you're going to end up buckling. And I'm an empath. Like, that is 100% me, what you just described. And it took me years to learn that if I don't take care of myself, and I have different outlets that allow me to shove this weight off, right, then I buckle under the weight that everybody else is putting on me. And it's 100% how, you know, I feel as a father sometimes, I feel as a best friend, I feel as a coach, right? It's like, I need these outlets to be able to take care of me if I'm going to, especially in the long run, take care of myself. Because, you know, 50 pounds right now doesn't feel heavy, but 50 pounds over a year, that feels really heavy, you know?
Yeah, that's great perspective, guys. Yeah, so I want to move on to something that I came across in your book, and it's a quote by John Wooden, and it's, happiness is in many things. It's in love, it's in sharing, but most of all, it's in being at peace with yourself, knowing that you are making the effort, the full effort, to do what's right. And it's how you followed up to that I really liked. And it was, happiness comes from the full effort of just doing what's right. And I just really internalized that, because it's something that I love talking about, fulfillment. I've gotten away from the word happy as much because I just kind of feel like that's just a short-term emotion, and it doesn't really provide, you know, that long-term feeling of, you know, fulfillment that I think really just brings you overall happiness in life. And I'd love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, the next book I write is I don't know if it's going to have the word happiness in it, unless it's, you should stop trying to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Fulfillment and purpose.
Yeah. And you ask anybody, you know, what do you want in life? I think 9 out of 10 times people are going to tell you they want to be happy. And I just think that's the wrong answer.
Well, think about it this way, then. Like, a good way to frame happiness, anger, sadness is just an emotion. It's temporary. It's not a state of being. You want to strive towards purpose and fulfillment. That is a state of being. That is the state that you're in. That's what you're trying to always be in. Happiness is just a temporary emotion. Those come and go, and that's impossible to keep. But if you ask somebody what they want, that's what they tell you most often. Happy.
Yeah.
That's what you
right.
And I think it's an individual definition too, right? Because if I say, hey, what makes you happy? It's going to be different person to person, and it's painting very broadly. Whereas if I said, hey, what's your purpose? While that too is different person to person, it's very specific. What fulfills you? That's more specific than what makes you happy. Dude, eating a box of brownies, watching a movie makes me happy. Does that make me fulfilled? No, that makes me feel like a piece of garbage after, you know what I mean? So the fulfillment and the purpose, I think, is really important when it comes to really what drives you. And, you know, going to that John Wooden quote, that the happiness, or in this case, I think the purpose and the fulfillment of self comes from the effort that you're putting forth. Because something that I'm a big believer in is we are not in charge of the outcome. There are too many things in this life that are far beyond our control, right? I'm sure we all have experiences where we're like, dude, I gave it all I got and I missed the target, but I was still proud of my effort. And it gave me the confidence in myself through that effort to keep going. Whereas if I only attached myself to the outcome and I didn't hit my target, I'm like, dude, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to try again because I didn't hit the target. So we have to find a way to align ourselves with the effort. And I summarize that as effort over outcomes. We have to put the focus on that effort. Because, man, I'll tell you, writing a book, you're going to miss the target. I don't know how many times I rewrote chapters because I was like, this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't it. But I was proud of the effort that I was putting forth. And I knew that if I just kept putting forth that effort, at some point I would get there. And especially when it comes to self-worth, the effort is what we need to focus on, because we cannot judge ourselves and our ability to grow based on outcomes. Too many things out of our control.
Yeah, and one of the things I liked as you kind of, you know, kept hitting that topic was when you say, you know, life doesn't always give you what you want, but it gives you what you need. And, you know, I can speak for Mike and myself on this. We're religious. We're into God. And, you know, I trust with my full effort that, you know, God will always give me what I need. And so when I pray, I make it a conscious effort to never ask for outcomes or ask for things. I just ask for what I need. And for me, I just find that to be incredibly useful, right? Because I'm not expecting an outcome and I'm not asking for anything. I just ask for the tools and the ability to carry out his mission, right? And I think that's the ultimate goal. We're just trying to carry out life's mission.
Well, and sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, so I just wanted to hit on that because I can really resonate with that right now, because I'm definitely in one of the toughest seasons in my life, and you would probably never know it if you talked to me, but it's insane, all the things that are happening at once. And when I pray, I just like that. I'm not praying to, hey, get me out of these situations or give me $1 million. I'm like, hey, just, you know, give me the, you know, the strength and give me the lessons. Like I know there's a lot to learn through here, and I know it's just the tools, right? And I don't know the outcome, and only God knows that. So I try to, like, I think it's a human thing to want to control the outcome, and there's no control in that. I can just control what's right around me right here, and that's it. And just that's why I pray for strength to do, and actually the tools to do that. So it's just funny because Denny said that, because that's literally the season I'm in right now in my life. So that's all I pray for, is that I don't pray for the outcome. I don't wish or pray for God to hand me anything, but just those things. Let's just talk about. Love it.
Yeah, and it's okay to have goals and seek an outcome, but ultimately, I think the idea is to embrace the process and put in all the effort you can to just do the right things. And then if you do, you just got to trust that the outcome will be there waiting for you. And if it's not, then so be it. You know, be proud of your effort, like you say in the book.
Yeah, man, I think that's really important. I love this faith perspective that we're able to take here, because faith is a huge part of my life as well. It's what really got me out of my depression. And you know, when it comes to setting these goals, like you said, Danny, it's very important to have outcome-oriented focus on, like, hey, this is my target. But again, recognizing I may miss, it's going to change, who cares? More importantly than achieving the goal is who you become in the process of achieving that goal, right? And that is 100% effort-based. That has nothing to do with the outcome. You get the outcome, you're going to be the better person because of it, right? You missed the outcome, but you still went through the same process. You're going to be a better person, right? So that's the whole thing. And I think when we have this faith in God or higher power, to, you know, whoever, whatever that means to somebody else, but God for us, we recognize that the outcome is His. And what better way to recognize that the outcome is going to happen the way that it happens if my effort is 100%. I'm giving everything that I have. Great. That's all He's going to ask of me. Therefore, that's what I need to ask of myself.
Yep.
And the outcome will be what it is supposed to be. And when it comes to life, if we're not ready to receive the thing that we are striving to accomplish, then we're becoming the person that when we try again, maybe we will be ready to receive that, right? But I have learned through this entrepreneurial journey that, you know, I would love to have my own business and be this really successful entrepreneur. I'm not capable of handling that yet, and I fully acknowledge that. There are so many other things I have to learn through the process of becoming that and achieving that goal to be ready to receive it. So look, God has all those things out there for me. But in order for me to receive those things, to be truly ready to receive them from Him, I have to become the man that He needs me to become in order to handle those things. And that comes through the process and the effort that I put forth. And one more thing before I get off my soapbox for a second, but I want to express to the listeners here that 100% of your effort doesn't mean 100% max capacity effort every single moment. Today, your 100% effort could be 75% of yesterday's 100% effort, could be 60% of your total max capacity effort. It doesn't matter. Moment to moment to moment, whatever your 100% is in that moment is what you have to give. You are human. You are imperfect. You're not going to get perfect sleep every night. You're not going to eat well every day. You're not going to have the emotional capacity to balance everything life throws at you. So your 100% is going to vary day to day. It doesn't matter. You have to give what you have. And that's what you have to recognize is your effort in the moment. Be attached to that.
That's awesome. And that brings me right into where I want us to take this conversation next. And it's, you know, especially from talking to you now, the last few days and last week or so. And one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on is because you're genuine, you're real. And I think we see so much garbage now on the internet and about, you know, perfection and, you know, I don't miss. I always go to the gym. I always eat perfect. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I'm just sick of hearing it, frankly. And so it's been refreshing, you know, the conversations that we've had over the last week or so. And that's, again, why I wanted to have you on. And just an example of that, I wanted to touch upon a video that you put up just the other day that I really liked. And it was, you know, you sat down there, you showed you some humility, and you were like, you know what? Today my kids got the best of me. You know, I just wasn't on my game today. I don't remember your exact terminology or whatever, but, you know, you really put it out there and you were like, you know what? I'm not fucking perfect. And it's just refreshing to see that because I don't think we see enough of it.
Yeah, man, I'll be the first to admit I'm far from perfect, man. I mean, there are so many things that my posture just changed talking about. I could feel me kind of like shrink underneath that recognition of like, dude, I have so much to do. But again, going back to that conversation of like, hey, some of these things are broken. It doesn't have to be, you know, emotional or, you know, broken in the sense of it doesn't work, but it's like, man, I'm working on these things. And if I fail to recognize that I need to work on these effort and I think that everything's okay, things are going to fall by the wayside. And I think that recognition of our faults, let's say, is, you know, the virtue of humility that we need to carry with us. You know, going back to the godly perspective, we've been asked to strive to be perfect. We know that we can't be, but in order to do that, we have to recognize our faults. And man, I think that is totally okay. We are human. What are we supposed to expect from one another? And I think, you know, one of my superpowers that I've come to recognize is empathy. And that comes from recognizing the faults that I hold in myself. Right. And I think if we're playing this long game of life, because it is a long game, right? We want to die young as late as possible, right? We want to stay healthy and fit, and we want to enjoy the quality of life for as long as we can. we need to remove that weight again. And that comes from just recognizing like, you're not going to be perfect, man. And that's okay. You know, and I think especially here, like guys, we're taking a leadership perspective, putting out our perspectives online. And if we are telling everybody like, yes, I go to the gym 7 days a week and I eat perfectly and I'm the perfect husband and I'm the perfect father, and other people can't live up to this image that we're putting out there, that's not good leadership, right? Because then that makes people feel like they're less than and they're incapable of living up to that. And so I think that from a leadership perspective, we need to recognize I'm not perfect, but I'm striving to do the best that I can. And that is really part of my brand, is I'm just always trying.
And I think that's why you're going to be hugely successful, because like Denny said, I think there's just a lot out there where people, they're either BS, and you can tell they're just completely, making stuff up, or this is like the new trend, right? Like I'm going to do a podcast and be this inspirational person, this leader, and try to market it and get money off of it. It's obvious, you know what I mean? So they pretend they're these perfect people that don't do anything wrong, and you need to be like me, and they swear up and down like it takes these things. But then when you have genuine people like you, Denny, you know what I mean, you guys are talking, giving, like you just said, I saw the same video. I was checking out your Instagram and just showing you we're not perfect and we're never going to be. I think that people are going to resonate with that. Is pretty much what I'm getting at. I love seeing it. It's a breath of fresh air, because there's just too much of the other stuff out there right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Make sure you add yourself to that list there, man. You're right there with the authentic gentleman we're all trying to be. And I even posted this morning, like I missed my workout. I left after 17 minutes because I recognized in myself, like I'm feeling not just sick, but like I've got Crohn's flare up borderline here. I got too many other things I can't do. Like I'm going to lose that battle with me at the gym so that I can win the rest of the day. Like that's just what happens. I wasn't perfect there. I don't get to check my box if I got my full workout in today. Okay, I'm going to go do it tomorrow. That's all right. I got other things I got to do. And, I'm trying to put this phrasing around what it is we're describing and what I've come up with so far. Maybe you guys can help me wordsmith it, but it's this successful living paradox of, we look at people who are successful, or who at least put this image out there of, I'm living the successful life that you need to live. And here's what you need to do. You need to work out every day. You need to eat perfect. You need to ice bath. You need sauna. You're need to go for a 10-mile run. Like, dude, I can't do that. Like the life that I have, it just doesn't work. And so we look at successful people and think, in order to become successful, I need to live that life, not realizing that that's not the life that they lived in order to become successful, right? The grind is much different than the life that you live when you achieve it. And so that's really what I'm trying to show people. It's like, look, I'm trying to build a business. I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to get to this outcome. And in the process, man, life is hard. Life is heavy, dude. I got 3 kids, another one on the way. I'm still working my 9 to 5. I'm doing this. I'm working 14-hour days to make all this happen. I'm up at 4. I'm exhausted to the point of tears almost at the end of every single day. Yeah. This is the reality of life, trying to make these things happen. And people may see the Instagram and the podcast and the speaking, and it's like, oh, dude, he's made it. He's successful. Dude, I'm exhausted all the time.
Like, can I ask you a question, because I'm genuinely curious?
Please. Yeah.
Like all these things you described, and you got 3 kids, another one on the way. And I know you're going to give me an honest answer. Like, how do you feel you're able to divide your time with your family and give back to them?
Yeah, man, that's the question I ask myself every day. And I don't know if you guys, I don't think you can see it on the screen, but right up here on my wall, I have the Wassom's life code of conduct and our ethics, our value. And I have written in my own, vision deck and everything, my line in the sand. Sorry. And that is, I will not build a community at the expense of my own. So I focus very heavily, and again, I am not perfect. Let's make that very clear, but I focus very heavily on time spent with my daughters. I block my calendar off. I'm going on a movie date with them tomorrow. I make them breakfast every single morning. I take my daughters to school and pick them up as often as I can, so that I can make sure that I am not building a community at the expense of my own. And it is extremely difficult, because I know for me, I am so passionate about what I'm doing, like you guys are. I can justify internally spending all my time on helping other people, right? And then if I don't take the time to recognize my own family and my community, I could walk out of my office 5 years from now and be like, what happened? Where did this all go? Where'd my relationships go? My kids are 10, 15 years old now. What happened? So for me, I know my lines in the sand and I drew them before I started. It is a non-negotiable. And I think that's what we have to do is we have to create these contracts with ourselves of, we're going to be juggling a lot of balls. Some are glass, some are rubber, right? You can let some of them drop. My gym time, if that needs to drop, I let it drop. My family time, I cannot let that drop. That is the ball made of glass. I will not let go.
I appreciate you saying that, man, because obviously your family is way bigger than mine. And I just realized that I use the excuse, like, I don't have enough time. I'm not doing, and it's all BS. And especially listening to you just outlining the way you did it. I love that. I'm definitely myself. We just had this workshop here yesterday, actually talking about these exact same things. I'm like, man, I really need to plan out, like you just said, I plan out time like this. We are busy, but we can make time. We got to plan that time out so it doesn't just go by. And I definitely myself, that's something I need to work on with my wife and my stepdaughter. So I appreciate you sharing that, man.
Yeah, man. I think when it comes to time, and this is a mind shift I made when we had kids too, is everybody says, "Oh, I'll make time for it." Right? I can't make time for that. Well, let me clarify something. There's no making time. There's 24 hours in a day. You have to take the time. And if you are not taking time for you, somebody else is going to take time from you. And we see that with work. We see that with military. We see that with other people in our lives. If I don't block my calendar off and say, nope, this is for work, this is for family, it fills up with somebody else's stuff. And when we're telling everybody else yes, simultaneously, we're telling everything else no. And so we have to make that mind shift of making time to taking time. And every night I just go through my calendar and any space that's open, I take for what I need to get done. And sometimes that's family time, right? I block off, I'm having lunch with my kids, right?
Yeah.
That's just what we have to do. We have to take it.
Yeah. And I've done the same thing, just because, like you said, if you don't take the time for yourself, somebody else will take it. So I do that with my work calendar all the time. Just if there's space open, it's mine. I do the same exact thing. So I totally get that.
I think it's necessary, man. I think we're too lenient with time, right? Because the big thing is time and energy, especially at our age, man, with kids and other responsibilities. Energy is limited.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of time now too with employers, they feel entitled to your time.
Yeah.
If it's on your calendar, they think it's theirs. And it doesn't work that way. And you need to set that precedent, right?
Yeah, 100%, man. I'm West Coast and I'm on a national team. And so a lot of people on the East Coast, you East Coasters, man, you guys run the time zone of the world,
That's right.
And so I was getting meetings at 5:30 in the morning and I'm up at 4, but that should be my gym time. And so I was taking them for a while. I was like, you know what, man? So I block off between 4 a.m. and 6:30. I'm like, that's my time, man. And nobody's going to touch that because that's my workout time. That's my therapy in the gym time. That's time getting my kids up. You cannot take that from me. And we have to be protective of that. We have to learn to set those boundaries because the big thing that, I've again made the shift in parenting, but learned this as myself and what I coach people with is it's not what you teach, it's what you tolerate. If you tolerate somebody taking your time, they're going to continue to take it. No matter if you tell them, don't take my time, but you let them take your time, you tolerating them taking your time is going to lead to them doing it more, right? So it's not what you teach, it's what you tolerate. And that's with ourselves too. We can tell ourselves, I'm going to go to the gym, but if you don't, and you tolerate that misbehavior with yourself, then now you're breaking that contract. And that's a slippery slope, right? So that tolerating is really important when it comes to our time and our energy management, as well as the setting the goals and things like that.
Good stuff. Setting those boundaries, with your employer, whoever it is, to say, this is it. This is my left and right limit. And you can't get any closer than this. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that falls under our very first principle at Be the Standard of setting standards, right? And essentially that means, deciding what it is that you're willing to tolerate and what you're not, and setting those boundaries. And just to kind of hit on that a little bit more, I know, Alex, you kind of told us a little bit about your family values or your creed. I forgot what you called it. Code of conduct. I love that, by the way. No, I have it. You sent it to me. I just couldn't for the life of me remember what you called it. But no, I haven't. And I was looking at it, and there was a lot of really cool stuff on there. And again, our show being called Be the Standard, we've kind of made our 4 key principles: setting standards, creating habits, execution, and then accountability. If you had to, because your code of conduct is long, man, I looked at that thing. If you could take maybe 3 key principles out of that are the most important, where would you do? Where would you start, I should say?
Thinking about it from a parent perspective.
That document you sent me is longer than the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a page. If anybody wants to check it, it's on my website. I think I kept it up there.
It's really cool though. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I have it framed up here. It's I've had it for about 10 years now, but I'll take a step back and focus mainly on the listeners here rather than me being a parent, which is where I've been trying to be very present lately. First and foremost, it all starts with you. And I think that kind of goes along with the Be the Standard for you. But if I were to boil down my first point, it all starts with you. It all comes down to you. You control you. Nobody can make you do anything. Nobody can make you be anything. You have to recognize your thoughts, your words, your actions, the standard that you come to live by and accept. It all starts with you. I think that's what I would start with. Oh man, boiling down to 3, dude. Oh, I should have thought about this beforehand.
You can give me 1 if you want. And I'll just say that just to touch on what you just said, Mike and I have said that as well, as far as just being the standard and how it does start with you. And you really have to be the standard for yourself before you can start doing that for others and coaching others. And so that was a great point that you made there. And that's something that Mike and I talk about all the time as well.
Yeah. I think if I were to add, and I'm going to have to write you, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to boil this down into 3, and I'm going to write it back to you when I have more time to kind of like meditate on it.
Oh, no worries.
I really like that simplification because it is long. But I think in alignment with, it all starts with you. It goes back to the effort over outcomes. And that is always give what you have. Like that's gotta be it, because for me, that is so important for self-confidence, which, that word confidence, break it down, etymology, the root word is trust and reliability. If we're going to trust ourselves and then have other people trust us, they have to know we're always going to give everything we got. So I think that 100% principle is something that I would have it in there. And then it would be something to do, and I want to find this in there and boil it down a little bit more directly, but with empathy and love, I think that that is something I would absolutely include in there, because I think empathy, again, being one of my target attributes to have, is how we can relate to everybody else, and just recognizing that everybody's going through something. Yeah. And so like that understanding, that Christ-like approach of like, my hand is always outstretched because I understand that you're going through something. I want to be there for you. So having empathy for others and removing that judgment of who they may have been, but focusing on who they're trying to become, that is something really important to me, because I've been through, I'm ashamed of who I was. And if people continue to judge me for that man that I once was, I wouldn't be able to move forward and move past it. Right. So that would be in there. So I'm going to take that time, man. That's going to be my walk away exercise for you. I'll come back to that.
That was a great one. And I actually just got goosebumps hearing it, because, and Mike knows this about me, I've kind of beat myself up about mistakes I've made in the past. And I've kind of allowed myself to define, for those things, define who I am. And I've really had to do a lot of work on myself to make sure that I don't do that, and I'm more empathetic towards myself. So that's a great point, because I've definitely struggled with that, and Mike's actually helped me a great deal to not do that to myself. So thanks, brother.
Yeah, man, can I ask how? Because I think that's super important, man. I mean, the men that I work with, that is probably the biggest thing, regardless of the experience. Like if we just look at common humanity, that is one of the biggest things that we are so hard to let go of. We just let it just attach itself to us. How did you guys get through that?
Well, I think it's important to address how you get there. So I think we get there because we do have high standards for ourselves. So when we act so egregiously out of character and have that, maybe crisis of character, and we do things that we don't really feel are aligned with our values, with who we truly are, I think it really causes us to be very hard on ourselves. And I know that's the reason for me. That's why I've done that, because I do have high expectations of myself, and I expect myself to conduct, my actions in a certain way. I expect to treat people a certain way. And when I fall short, I'm very hard on myself.
Yeah.
So talking about it from a friend perspective and trying to frame it for them, you really got to make them realize, or just talk to them. You're like, listen, this is something that you did. This isn't who you are. And if you hold this high standard for yourself, which a lot of us do, and you violate that, your principles, you violate like your code of conduct per se, right? And you're like, man, this is not me. But you're too tough on yourself. But you would be easier on someone else than you would be on yourself. I think it's almost just putting the mirror up and say, listen, man, like, what would you do if you were in my shoes? And I think that's the best way for someone to really help a friend out, is really throw it back that way.
Mike, you freaking took the words right out of my mouth, man. So I write about that in the second chapter on self-talk, and I call that becoming a subjective spectator. Pulling yourself out and looking at yourself, your life, your actions from a third party, and then asking yourself, what if my friend did this? What if my child did this? What if my wife did this? What advice would I give them? Because oftentimes we think that the way that we motivate ourselves is to belittle, is to berate, is to be like, you piece of garbage, you need to do better. It's like, well, if I took that approach with somebody else, how would they react? Of course they would crumble and shirk under the weight that we're verbally putting onto them. So if we wouldn't do that with somebody else, why in the world do we do that with ourselves? Yeah. And that is one of the biggest things, Dan, that I had to recognize, because that was my approach. Like, again, my inner demons, man, I talk about the story of the two wolves. My evil wolf within, dude, he hounds the shit out of me, man. And if I let him feast on me that way, Mike, it's the exact same thing. He just chirps in my ear and busts my ass to the point where I'm just broken down to a powder. Yeah. And I have to tell him to shut up and separate myself from him and orient myself towards the man I want to be. And the first thing that I do in that case is say, okay, Alex, how would you turn this self-talk on somebody else? What if this was your wife? What if this was your best friend? And we're so much softer on everybody else than we are on ourselves. And that can be a powerful tool when we learn how to channel it, right? High standards, beautiful. But if we don't give ourselves that grace to be human and recognize our failures are okay, they're just learning opportunities, keep moving, then they become a detriment, right? So
that's the key word, man, grace. I love that word so much, because it's so true. You got to have grace for yourself when it comes to that. And even just being a friend, being around, I won't let anybody around me speak badly about themselves. Like, fuck up, I'm such an idiot, I'm so stupid. Like, no, don't ever give those thoughts power by speaking them. You know what I mean? Like, that's so huge. And I won't allow people to do it around me. And it's good to have it called out. You definitely should never do that about yourself. Like, because you wouldn't allow someone to do it around you. Like, why would you ever say that about yourself? And I'm with you on this, because I didn't think about this till right now. So I love that you brought this up. I mean, definitely go years back, I used to always say stuff like that. I'm like, man, I was so hard on myself. I'd get so mad, like really mad. And like, I would give that, like, I love what you said, what is a beast, whatever. Like, I gave that power.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And man, like over years and years of not doing that, have more empathy with myself, more, like you said, the word grace. Love that. But yeah, I forgot that I used to be that way.
That's a successful living paradox, right? Like, look what you had to do to get to where you are now. Right now, it's just your standard of living, right? You're like, no, not allowed. But like, you had to fight through a bunch of shit to get there, right? And it's interesting because Dan Siegel, I think he's at Harvard, a psychiatrist out of there. He talks about this exact point, and he says, look, you need to give that negativity within you a name so you can actually push it away. Like, no, you're not allowed to speak to me that way, right? Because I have to speak to myself in a positive way. I then add, so that's name to tame. I then add name to aim in there. It's like, okay, what would the best version of me do now? How do I turn myself to that man? What would he say to me? How would I speak to me if I were that guy talking to me now? So let's reframe and level up and raise the standard of my self-talk by orienting myself to the man I want to be. That's how we need to start speaking to ourselves. And look, I'm not saying it can't be direct and bold, but it needs to be empowering rather than belittling, right? It's still constructive criticism. We're not saying that this grace means, oh, everything's okay, you didn't mess up, so let it go, right? We still have to hold ourselves accountable, but it's done in an empowering and uplifting way to say, go try again. It's okay, right? Which it takes a lot of effort. I know it's much easier said than done.
I think, and just to end it on that point, like, I think you nailed it right there. Like, letting people know it's not easy. It takes work and a lot of effort, but I love that. I love the way you framed it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, and I love the two wolf analogy that you put together there, because you were explaining your tattoos earlier. I actually have two wolves tattooed on my leg. I have a nice, kind, tame one on the inner part of my leg. And then I have a fierce, don't mess with this guy, wolf on the outside. And I put them in those places for a reason. But I just like that because I do feel like those two characters are constantly just going at it or coming at me in different perspectives. So
did you get that from the story of the two wolves? Do you know that story?
No, I don't.
Oh, dude. Let me share.
I've heard about it vaguely, and I'd love to hear more in depth. But yes, I've heard of it. I can't recite it probably the way you can, but yes, I'm familiar with it.
I haven't heard it. I'd love to hear it.
You haven't heard? Okay. Oh man, I so much that I got the one you feed tattooed here on me because it's a mental mantra that I hold. But there's a Native American chief who is with his grandson. And I add this part in, and he takes his grandson fishing, because who doesn't get frustrated when they're fishing? Always happens at some point. And his grandson does just that. He gets frustrated while he's fishing. And the chief, his grandfather, takes the opportunity and he says, grandson, there's a battle going on inside of you, inside of me, inside of everybody. Recognize we're not alone in this battle. Inside of you, inside of me, inside of everybody. And it's the battle between two wolves. One is the evil wolf, who is greed, who is lust, who is hatred, who is all the negative emotions that we associate with. And then there's the good wolf, who is love, who is understanding, who is empathy, who is trust, who is all the good things we associate with. And the grandson sits there for a second, he thinks about it, and he says, well, grandfather, which wolf wins? And the grandfather smiles and he says, the one you feed. That's what it comes down to, man. It's the one you feed. So there's that evil wolf and that good wolf inside of all of us, man. Recognize it's not just you. You are not a bad person because you have an evil wolf inside you. We all have that evil wolf. And this isn't just some, an ancient lore. It's scientifically proven. We all have that that negative wolf in us. But you get to make the choice moment to moment to moment. Which wolf are you going to feed and allow to feed on you? Right. So that negative self-talk, man, that feeds that evil wolf. And I named mine Buster. My mom named it for me when I was like 8. He's been living in me forever. And then my good wolf is Alexander Wolf, which is after the passing of my grandmother, kind of an homage to my grandmother, Shirley Wolf, but also a recognition of that is not the man I want to be anymore. I want to be this man, right? I want to be that guy. That's what I'm aiming myself towards. So you name to tame the evil wolf, and then you name to aim to become the good wolf. What would he feed on? And that is what helps make our decisions there. So I love that story because it puts some character around, okay, what do I do? Right? Because that self-talk can be really nebulous and it's hard to kind of grasp that. It's like grabbing fog, but you put a name and a story to it. You assign those evil wolves within. It's like, okay, now I recognize them. You're not allowed to speak to me this way, Buster, Alexander Wolf. Now what? Where do I go from here? So I love that story.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. And I had heard that before with the grandfather talking about the two wolves. And that's a great story. And I'm gonna have to remember it now. So when people ask about my tattoos, I can actually tell the story the way you just told it, because that's really good.
Didn't have the tattoos to not know the story then.
Well,
It's cool that you
think
got it before you knew the
overall,
story.
like, you
Yeah.
get it. Like, I understand what it meant. I just didn't know how to tell the story, if that makes sense. Like, I knew the story of we have two wolves inside of us and they're battling, whatever.
Well, it makes you feel
But
better. I got it up on here on my wall again too, so I look at it every day. That's how I know the story.
see, he cheats.
Yeah, exactly. You ain't cheating, you ain't trying, man.
That's it. That's it. But yeah, no, I think this has been a great discussion, Alex. And to have you on as our first guest has been just an honor, man. It's really,
dude.
really cool that you agreed to do this. And for all of our listeners, go get this book. You're Stronger Than Your Pain. By Alex Wassom, Stronger Than Your Pain. I'm about halfway through and I think it's incredible. Learning a lot of great lessons. Man. And just, even just hearing you talk today, I think was just so enlightening, right? I mean, you share a great perspective on all of these things that Mike and I talk about all the time. So just really appreciate your time, really appreciate everything that you're doing. And I think it's going to be awesome, 6, 8, however many months go by and, watching you grow, watching you expand and having you back on. It's going to be awesome. So again, just can't thank you enough, man.
Dude, the honor is all mine, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Danny, we had this conversation yesterday about the guests that you're having on. I'm humbled to be amongst you amazing men doing what you're doing. The fact I've looked up to you guys and the guys that you're going to have on as guests for years, and to be a peer with you guys really is humbling. So thank you guys for entrusting me with coming on here. And I appreciate you guys expanding my perspective. Mike, you're like, I want to disagree with you on that. It's like, dude, please, like, what a beautiful way that we can all come together and be like, let's expand this for a second. Exactly. I love that. So thank you for letting me bring my perspective and enlarging it with yours. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man, of course. Yeah, of course. And it was funny because when Mike did that, I was like, I was gonna do it because Mike and I kind of share that same view on that same thing. So but yeah, no, that's what this is about. This is about getting, similarly like-minded guys together. But I mean, we're not robots, right? We're not just gonna agree always.
Yeah.
But the perspectives still aren't far off, right? I think at the end of it, we got to the same point. We got to the same conclusion. Yeah. And ultimately, man, it's just been great having you here. And for all of our viewers, again, Stronger Than Your Pain, you have to read this book. This guy's awesome.
Thanks, brother.
So yeah, no, check that out. Please subscribe to our pages on Instagram, Be the Standard Podcast. Alex Wassom is on there as well. Go follow him. He's a stud. Mike Burns 1, and then my personal page is Denny_Paul12. Also find us on LinkedIn at Be the Standard Podcast. And again, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. And thanks again, Alex. Really appreciate you.
You're the man.
Thanks, gents. Appreciate you guys.
Be the Standard.
That's it, baby.
That's right.